my question to you, I have my own answer, but I
Yeah.
feel like my question to you would be, what is, if you had to do a sales pitch for the podcast,
Yeah.
like what is the podcast for if you
Yeah.
had to come up with a,
Yeah.
elevator
pitch.
pitch or whatever
Yeah.
for the podcast?
Be longer than elevator pitch, but yeah. So that's the question.
That's the question.
Okay, am I answer it right now?
Sure.
What the podcast is for? Well, the podcast was simply this. I've trained so many hockey players, and I've trained so many high level hockey players, and I've dealt with so many parents along the way and so many coaches. And what I found, there was just a lot of confusion. A lot of people have their own ideas and their own agendas, and there's a negativity and unreal expectations for people. And what I realized is that coaches wanted a place where they could learn something about hockey, and maybe they wanted to have a place where they can ask a question that they didn't feel was ever going to get answered, or they're too embarrassed to be asked. Like, how do I deal with a parent that's down my throat all the time? And because to answer that, to go ask that question is it could be a humbling experience, or it can make you nervous to ask, because it makes you maybe feel like you're not in such good control as you should be as a coach. So that was one of the things. It was to help coaches deal with players and parents. It was also for parents, for the reason that, you know, it's answering questions that parents ask me every day, that come up over and over. And I know if there was 10 people that asked me, then there's probably 100. And if there's 100, there's probably 10,000. So it's the same questions. It's in different things. So it was like, can we settle down the craziness of being a hockey parent, or decisions you have to make for your kids? And it was just to give people a place where they could say, oh, okay, that's not just happening to me, it's happening to a lot of people, or that I was thinking about that myself, because it's the same thing all the time. And then of course it was for the players, because a lot of players that are the same issues. Where do I go and get these questions? I might be too embarrassed to ask these questions, or something happened in our podcast that's happening to me. I felt that way. And the reason that I can say all these things is, number one, I was a player. I played at very high levels, right? I played on the Team Ontarios. I played in the OHL. I coached in the OHL. I've been a hockey trainer for 23 years, like a skills trainer, and I've worked with many NHL players and many junior and college players, and I've worked all the way down. And I've seen every level, from youth hockey to pro to college to junior and everything in between. And it's my experience as all those different things. And I'm a hockey dad. My son plays at a high level hockey. So all those experience that every single person in hockey has, I've already been through and deal with it on a daily basis. So I just feel like it's a very, very helpful platform for people to come to and get something out of it. And what's really important to me is, I always, as a hockey player and as a coach, my job, I always felt, was to make other people better, or make the people around me better. And I feel as a trainer, as a skills coach, that's what everybody used to say. Like, you're really good at being a skills coach. You must love it. And I do love it. But the thing I love most is that I'd be able to make someone else better, and have a positive light on people. And that's really important to me. So that's the goal of the podcast, is to have even though sometimes it might have a tone to it, because there's so many crazy things in the hockey world. The message is to take something positive out of it, or to take something that is going to be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, the thing I tried to bring to it, because when you started off doing it as like interviewing people in the industry and answering questions like that, which is obviously very useful. And I think the flavor that I tried to bring to it is really just from a place of humility, that I didn't make the NHL. I played at a very high level, but most people that play hockey are going to be like me. Most people that play hockey are going to be, they were good, but just not good enough, or just missing something, or just couldn't figure this thing out. And an issue that I remember recognizing at the time when I was playing through college and through junior, is that people that are playing hockey don't learn the lessons hockey can provide. So when they're done playing, they have nothing, or they keep chasing the dream and they don't know when to stop, because hockey's all they've ever known, and they haven't recognized, learned, and taken those things and integrated them into their life for after hockey's over. And so I think taking the combination between what everything you just said and then trying to bring that other perspective of it as a guy that had a goal to play at the pro level, to play in the NHL and didn't get there, like basically all other hockey players, what else is going to be left for us? Like what else is going to be left for those kids that couldn't make that jump? And the answer is not nothing. The answer is actually it can teach you a lot of things that are useful in other parts of your life when you move on away from hockey. And even if you play pro or play in the NHL and you're done one day, so then what do you have after that? And so I think that's kind of the perspective that I try to bring in, kind of piggybacking off a lot of the hockey framework that we use through your experience. And I think that's something that can be super, super useful just as a player for sure. But then for a lot of parents and coaches, maybe they hear the player side of things that they didn't know before, they never thought of. Or if, maybe you can relate as mom and dad, if you hear me talk about when I used to play and your kid is around my age or younger and in the same ballpark of what they might be currently going through. So it kind of puts that other perspective on it also on top of just the hockey stuff. It spreads it out a little bit more to be like a life thing. You know what I mean? And I think that could be super useful whether you're the player or the parent or the coach, like you said. So I think it just kind of comes together pretty nicely for people to listen to all the different topics that we cover. It can be really, really useful.
Yeah, the side benefit, maybe to just end on that or whatever, the side benefit that I didn't see when we started doing this was I was at a game the other night and a young guy, probably about, I would say in early 20s, almost 20, something around that, came up to me and said, "Hey, you have the Power Tech podcast?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I love it. I watch every one. I love it." I said, "Well, who do you play for?" He goes, "I don't." And it's like, okay, so why do you watch it? And then, but we have a lot of people that say that. They say that's the message that you get out of this thing, that it helps them in everyday life, and that's part of being a player, right? And then the other side thing that I didn't expect as much was like people like Steve Ott, who was an NHLer and who listens to our podcast all the time, who coaches in the NHL right now, and he tells me how much he likes it, and because he's now a hockey dad. Right. So it's a different than what he ever did. And he goes, I didn't know all this stuff. And he goes, it's been very helpful. Or when we get pro players that send stuff out and they say that like, I'm really getting a lot out of your podcast. That was a side benefit of what we do. So, but the point is that it always comes back to what our intentions and our heart was with this, is to make hockey a better place, I guess you to say.
Yeah.
And a good learning center, but a better place.
Totally.
So that when dad wants to snap on his kid, he can maybe reflect on one of our episodes and says, you know what, I remember Eric said something about he doesn't want to hear it, or it's just like, something resonated with him. He goes, maybe it stops the dad from doing that one time or forever. And then maybe when the kid or a kid decides to complain about his coach or hears someone on his coach, he hears a leadership lesson that we talked about one day, and he takes it to heart, because a lot of these kids do, and he's ready to snap on one of the kids, and he goes, no, like that's not leadership. Maybe that's a good thing, right? And it's the coach that's going to snap on a kid. He goes, you know what, that's inappropriate. I got to learn how to talk to him instead. Then it's been a better. Now, I'm not trying to be a little wiener here. That's actually a good place to be. Right. And then these are things that you could take, as you said, from your hockey, and you apply it to your first job or your second job. It's all the hard work that you've done. The process is the same, and the habits should be the same. And you should be a more successful person.